Welcome back to In Focus Kentucky, where each week we look at one different issue impacting Kentuckians. And on today's episode, we are celebrating Black History Month by speaking with some of Kentucky's most distinguished African-American leaders. And joining me now is PG Peoples, President and CEO of the Lexington Urban League, a group that has worked to empower African-Americans across Kentucky since 1968. PG, thanks so much for talking to
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you for having us.
Great. Hey, not a problem at all. And let's talk about the Urban League. Give us a little bit of a background about when this was started and the reasoning behind it.
Wow, it's interesting that you would ask that because we're the Urban League here started in 1968. So this year celebrates 50 years for us. How that came about, you're too young to remember, but during the 60s, there's a lot of turmoil, a lot of unrest, racial tension, and so forth going on in the United States. Lexington had some of its issues, not nearly as deep as some of the issues they had in the larger cities. But a group of people got together and said that we should have an urban league here in Lexington, and they started mounting the charge to raise the money to get the relationship with the National Urban League and to open an urban league here. And so they were successful. Whitney Young, who at that time was the national executive director of the Urban League, who, by the way, was a native Kentuckian, born in Simpsonville, educated at Kentucky State, came down, met with some people here too. And with the local leadership from the Herald Leader, I don't know if it's the Herald Leader then, but it was the newspaper was then, from the University of Kentucky, and other business leaders launched the Urban League.
And talk about affordable housing. I know that's something that you all have been very involved with. And back in 1981, that's when the affordable housing journey began.
Yes. So
how did that begin actually?
Well, the way urban leagues work is you do an assessment of your community, assessing the needs. And our assessment during that time, clearly depicted the need for more affordable housing in the urban core. So in 1981, we put together a development corporation as part of the Urban League, the express purposes of doing economic development in the urban core. And but what rose to the top mostly was the need for that housing. So our corporation launched an initiative to about some dilapidated units over on Chestnut Street and to revitalize those and sell them to first-time home buyers. And at the same time, we were going to be training ex-inmates returning to our community, training them in housing construction. 35 years ago to today, that journey has brought us to the point where today we proudly talk about having built over $26 million worth of units in Lexington, about 260 units, either single-family units or we've got two multifamily apartment complexes.
And how does the funding work with being able to provide this housing for people in the city of Lexington?
Well, funding, when you start putting together housing initiatives, it's usually a hodgepodge of different funding cycles. There's always some local funding from the business community. There's local funding that comes through local government, funding that comes from federal government. Funding that you can get through your local lending institutions. But mostly now we deal with tax credits and direct loans from banks. And then there's funding from the federal government to help the rental units. We've got about 50 plus rental units. So most of those are what you probably heard of, Section 8 rentals.
Right.
But the other houses that we built, they were sold to first-time home buyers.
And being able to speak to the advocacy to those people who may not know where to go, where to look. That's something that you've been able to help do over these many years.
Advocacy, we wear two hats at the Urban League. One is the programs that we produce to assist, but we also, advocacy is what we call intervening on behalf of our constituents and oftentimes speaking truth to power about issues that affect our people. You know, one of the things, while a lot has changed in the years, 50 years that we've been here, a lot has remained the same. So there's still issues that have to do with race. There's still issues that have to do with discrimination. There's still issues that have to do with leaving people behind. So we see it as our role to be that voice, along with other community organizations, to be that voice, to get into the meeting rooms, to speak on behalf of people who cannot.
Well, PG, we really appreciate you being a part of the program this week, but also just the contributions you've done to the city of Lexington over these 50 years and counting. Thanks for joining us for In Focus Kentucky. You can watch this or any of our shows at SpectrumInFocus.com. And of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Mario Anderson TV. I'd love to hear which issues you think we should be tackling on this show. Have a great week.